So, someone you've always known as a man is now transgender. He wants you to know three things. One, he wants you to know that he now identifies as a woman. Two, he wants you to love and respect him. And three, he wants you to call him her. Well, you know, you can do numbers 1 and 2, but you're wondering about number 3. Should I call him her? What is the right thing to do when a transgender makes that request? Welcome to Sound Doctrine Bites. How you doing? I'm Joe Dallas. Thank you for joining me. Well, this is the age of sound bites. It's also an age that calls for sound doctrine. So let's see if we can't bring the two together for a few minutes today. Let's do that as we discuss a tough topic for a lot of believers now, and that is the challenge of pronouns when you're dealing with transgender friends and loved ones. You remember about 6 years ago, the Olympian athlete Bruce Jenner came out as transgender, and he said, "From now on, call me Caitlin." And you probably remember the picture of him on Vanity Fair in women's lingerie and his essential demand that we now recognize him as female. Yeah, that wasn't just an announcement. It was a demand, wasn't it? Well, a lot of us were shocked, me included. I mean, Bruce Jenner, I have always considered not only a highly masculine man, but a very accomplished man. And I thought, well, you certainly have the right to transition, but do you have the right to really demand that I call you by a female name? Now, I can call you a lot of things. I can call you accomplished. I can call you someone I have admired very much. I can call you a man who obviously has a lot of capacity and has done some pretty wonderful things. But, and this is the big but, I cannot call you what I cannot really believe you are. I cannot call you what I cannot really believe you are. This is the dilemma so many believers have today when they face this particular demand. University professors have lost their jobs for misgendering people. That is, calling someone by the sex they appear to be, but not the sex they identify as. My gosh, parents are losing their kids. In Canada, a father lost custody of his daughter because his daughter was identifying as male and he refused to call her a male, and the state swept in and said, well, that's child abuse. We're not going to allow that. You're misgendering this son that you refuse to call a son. Now, in Norway, it's even worse. You know what? If you make a private comment against transgenderism, why, that can cost you a year in jail for making a private statement that is deemed to be critical of transgenderism. If it's a public statement, that'll get you 3 years. It's quite a demand being put out there. And lots of people, of course, in the face of that are saying, well, I'll accommodate that. I'll say what you want me to say. Why? Because I believe it? No, I just don't want to go through all the hassle. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to lose our relationship. I don't want to lose my social standing. But the question for you and I as believers is, can we accommodate? Let me explain why I believe we cannot. Can we accommodate the transgender friend or family member's request for love and respect? Not only can we must. How can we call ourselves serious followers of Christ if we don't? But can we accommodate their request for us to say something we don't believe? No, I don't believe we can, and here's why. Remember the first distinctive that we have on record about humanity. God's first distinctive he made about humanity is that we were made in his image. It's the first thing we read about the human race is, and God created humanity in his image. We are created in God's image. The second distinctive, right there near the top, God created the human race in one of two sexes, male or female. He created two sexes. We are a race of two sexes. There is no curtain number 3. Furthermore, the sex that we have is the sex we were assigned. God not only created a race of sexes, God assigned each member of that race a particular sexual status, male or female. And again, there is no curtain number 3. Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the womb, God said, I knew you. There was foreknowledge. Before I formed you in the womb, I had already determined what you would be. Foreknowledge. And then Psalm 139:13. For you formed me in my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. That's foreordination. Foreknowledge, I knew what you were to be. That's what I intended. Foreordination, I intended you to be male or female. What you were when I created you in the womb, that is what I have intended you to be. Therefore, we believe as Christians that to reject what God has assigned is to reject the wisdom of God himself. Romans 9:20, a very relevant verse when we talk about transgenderism. But indeed, O man, who are you to reply against God? Will the thing formed say to him who formed it, why have you made me thus? It's a relevant question. Will the thing formed, the created being, say to the creator, why did you make me thus? Perhaps I know better. This really, in theory, is nothing new. This harkens back to an ancient heresy that you see written about in 1 John and also in Colossians, the heresy of Gnosticism. Gnosticism from the word gnosis, meaning to intuitively know, to come to divinity through intuitive knowledge. Gnosticism. And Gnosticism was a heretical belief that the God who created us is flawed. That God is referred to as the demiurge, who, because of his own flaws, created a flawed race. Therefore, we were created flawed because our creator didn't really know what he was doing. It's up to us then, through our own intuition, our gnosis, Gnosis, that we come to determine what we really ought to be. Therefore, our full realization of who we are meant to be is not determined by the one who created us, who is flawed, but rather by us. And that's right out of Romans chapter 1, where Paul said, well, that which was created is no longer acknowledging its creator. It is basically becoming its own God and worshiping creation itself. Now, that being the case, of course, we can respect the right of the individual to make the decision to transition, to adopt an identity of the opposite sex, but we cannot revise the truth in the name of respect. We cannot revise truth in the name of respect. Therefore, sound doctrine bite number one. Respect and revision are not the same. Respect and revision are not the same. Isaiah 5:20, woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Woe to those who call the darkness light and who call the light dark. Woe to people who try to redefine what God has ordained, what God has created, what God has even blessed. Woe to people who, and there's no getting around this, usurp divine authority. You see, this becomes a sacred issue. Human beings are not given the authority or the prerogative to speak into existence what is not. That is a prerogative reserved only to God. When we attempt to take that power unto ourselves, we are thereby usurping divine authority. And in doing so, we do denigrate the wisdom of God. Now, does that mean when I'm talking with a transgender person who says, Joe, I want you henceforth to call me by the name Mary, even though you've always known me as Bob, does that mean I am going to go out of my way to insist on my way? No, let's not be jerks about this. I mean, just for example, if someone says, I want you to call me by a new name, I think I could with integrity say, do I really have to pick a name for you? You're my friend. You're someone I care about. Can't I simply converse with you and say, it's good to see you? And in fact, I hate to admit it, but oftentimes if I'm at a meeting of some sort, I forget people's names all the time. I don't know if you do that. I always have. So, hey, how are you? Oh, it's so good to see you, man. Et cetera, without even getting into the name, because in that case, I just don't remember what the name is. But linguistically, it is something that you can do. I can refer to someone without using a proper name or a pronoun if need be. And that way, I am not imposing on them something that they do not wish imposed on them, but I'm also not allowing them to impose something on me that I really cannot, with integrity, allow them to impose on me. This is about respect. And it's about respect largely for their struggle. I mean, when I am striving not to impose on them the fact that, no, I don't believe you. I think you were born a man, and therefore you will always be a man, and I am going to go out of my way to call you Bob. I think it's more respectful to basically step back and think, now, what kind of a struggle has this person been through that he honestly thinks he was born in the wrong body? Can you imagine how torturous that would be, to really look in the mirror and say, I know what I see, but what I see is not what I am. I have to do something to reconfigure myself, to bring myself into harmony with what I really feel I am. Now, that's a struggle that in most cases goes on for years before the transgender person finally says, this is who I am. I am coming out of the closet and declaring myself transgender. I may have been born biologically male, but I now identify as female. No, I cannot agree with that. because I cannot agree with the notion that God is imperfect and flawed and that what he designed and what he created is not what was meant to be. No, I cannot go along with that. But I can respect the struggle. I can respect the intensity of the person's experience. And that leads to sound doctrine bite number 2. Accommodate when possible. Accommodate when possible. Can I accommodate by calling a person by a name I don't believe they are? No, in integrity, with integrity, I cannot do that. But Paul did say, Romans 12:18, as much as lies within you, as much as is possible, live peaceably with all people. And I will try hard when I know someone who is transgender to avoid imposing on them the name I see them as without acquiescing to their demand that I call them by a name I know that they are not. I simply cannot go along with what I believe to be fundamentally a delusion, but I must show the respect and love for the person to realize, hey, I have not walked a mile in your shoes. I don't know what it's like being you. And while I cannot go along with what you are demanding or requesting of me, I can certainly respect the experience that led you to that point. And as much as lieth within me, I am going to do everything I can to preserve our relationship. I'm going to do everything I can to avoid using terms that needlessly offend you, even though I will not allow you to revise my concept of you or to express something that would indicate I believe or agree with your revision of yourself. As much as possible, as much as lieth within you, be at peace with all people. I will try. I will really try. But there are times our backs are up against the wall, aren't there? Because there are times somebody is going to say, no, that's not good enough. I will not meet you halfway on this. I identify as a woman. You must identify me as a woman. Or if I was born female, you must now identify me as male. No compromise, no accommodation. That is what you must do if you want a relationship with me, and there will be hell to pay if you don't do it. Now, that is the point this conversation is reaching oftentimes, not all the time. There are plenty of transgender people who are very reasonable and very respectful and can tolerate the idea that people have different viewpoints and worldviews, but there are others who are not. And I must say the politicized transgender movement, highly intolerant, very heavy-handed, very heavy-handed. And when you're dealing with someone who espouses that movement, yeah, your back is going to be up against the wall. That's not a comfortable position, but you know what? For Christians, at least for the Christian church historically, it's a rather familiar position. Peter and the apostles found themselves in that position. Peter was going into the temple at the hour of prayer, saw a lame man, spoke a healing to him. The man was healed. A crowd gathered when they saw the man who had been lame now walking and leaping and praising God. And Peter seized the moment and preached a sermon, as was often done on Solomon's porch in that area of the temple. Nothing wrong with that, nothing breaking with tradition about that. But, the message, that was highly offensive to the temple captains and the chief priest. And they said, you may no longer say this, you will henceforth say that. They told him what he could not say and what he could say. And that was a back against the wall moment where Peter had to say what we often quote from Acts 5:29. We ought to obey God rather than man. I mean, I cannot give lip service to something that I do not believe in. That's why Paul told the Ephesians 5:11, have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness. Now, seriously, you and I must respect the experience of the transgender person to the extent that we say, hey, I'm sure you deeply believe in what you're doing. I will give you that. I will assume that you are acting with sincerity, but I believe you are sincerely wrong. And I believe that when you try to revise what God has created and undo what is true and what is factual, if I go along with that revision, I am having fellowship with unfruitful works of darkness because, yes, I do believe it is unfruitful and even a work of darkness to take the sex God created you as and attempt to change what cannot be changed. Your DNA is still going to say what you are. I don't care what you do cosmetically to your body or how you identify yourself. Therefore, I cannot come into fellowship with unfruitful works of darkness. 2 Timothy 5:22, in fact, Paul told Timothy, do not be a partaker in someone else's sin. Someone wants to transition, I can respect that. I can be in a relationship with that individual. I can communicate with and love that individual. That I can do, but I cannot align myself with that particular thing which that individual is doing by calling that individual by the name he or she wishes to be called. That would be a participation in what I know to be sinful. And that's the point. I'm not required to be a preventer of another person's sin. I'm not the morality police, neither are you. We're not called to be a preventer of another person's sin, but we are forbidden to be a partaker in another person's sin. I'm not here to prevent another person's sin. but I cannot be a partaker of another person's sin, which leads to sound doctrine bite number 3, which is discriminate when necessary. Discriminate when necessary. Did I just lose you? Well, you know what? I understand. Discriminate these days is seen as a dirty word, but in and of itself, it really is not. Now, racial discrimination, no, that's not just wrong, it's evil. It is evil to believe one race is superior over another. It is evil to discriminate between races in that way. Gender discrimination, to believe that one gender is superior to another, that is evil. That is making a distinction that God does not make. But technically, discrimination is about simply making distinctions between what is good or bad, or what is healthy versus unhealthy, what is beautiful versus what is not beautiful. Leviticus 10:10, when God was giving Moses the law, he said one of the purposes of the law was so that, and I quote here, so that you can distinguish between the holy and the common, between the unclean and the clean. So you can distinguish between the holy and the common, between the unclean and the clean. You know what that is? Discrimination. Discrimination. God gives standards by which we can discriminate what is his will, discriminate between what is his will, what is not his will, what is right, what is wrong. So no, discrimination is not always a dirty word. And yes, you have to discriminate when necessary. Did Jesus discriminate? You bet he did. he discriminated between truth and error. I'm the way, the truth, the light. No one comes to the Father but by me. He discriminated between heaven and hell. He discriminated between what's righteous and what's unrighteous. Yes, he discriminated. Certainly he did. Now, why is that problematic for us today? Well, because there's been a shift in message. Initially, what we were getting from the LGBTQ community was a request for tolerance. Be tolerant of us. Be tolerant of us. Don't be disrespectful. Don't be abusive. Don't be hurtful. Be tolerant of the fact that we are different. We believe different things. We live in a different way. Okay, yes, we'll be tolerant. Why not? But, being a good neighbor calls for that. Sure. Then that particular request evolved into something different. Be inclusive. Include me in your life. Let me be a part of your life. Yes. Oh, I think that's right. We should. So yeah, I would say, let's be friends. Let's interact. Let's go have some coffee. Yes, I do want to be inclusive. I want you to be a part of my life. Yes, absolutely. But then even that shifted into a whole new one. Be good. By my definition. That's a heck of a shift. Because now be good by my definition means affirm what I affirm. If you don't, you're not good. Listen for this. You're going to hear more and more of it. The distinction between nice and good. Nowadays, it's rather chic for people who hold a gay affirming view or a trans affirming view to say, it's not enough for you to be nice. I need you to be good. You being nice to me, you being respectful of me, that is not enough. If you disagree with me, you're not being good. You don't hold the right position. Sort of a newfangled Puritanism that's going around here. Whereas if you don't hold to the orthodoxy, you are the sinner, and the sinner must be shunned. And that's why these days, what are we seeing? In cancel culture, in the whole woke movement, in the social justice movement, there's good and there's bad. And if you don't believe in what we believe, you are not good. And if you're not good, you must be shunned and you must be silenced. I don't need you to just be nice. It's not enough to be tolerant. No. You have to be good by my definition. And what else can we say to that, if not a very plain statement? I will never demand of you that you do something which would violate your own conscience, nor will I allow you to demand of me something which would violate my own conscience. Yes, I want peace. Yes, I want a relationship with you. Yes, I want to continually show you respect, and I hope this will not come between us, but ultimately, when push comes to shove, I ought to obey God rather than man. My priority is the Lord I serve and what he has taught and what he has revealed. This I must be faithful to. I will not impose that on you, but I will not allow you to interrupt that in my life either. And I hope with all my heart that you can live with that. Okay. If you are enjoying these Sound Doctrine Bites episodes, do 3 things for us, would you? Like us, follow us, and share us. Like us, follow us, and share us. Like us. You can like us on Twitter. On Twitter, the handle is Joe Dallas TGP. Joe Dallas TGP. Or if you go onto Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, it's Joe Dallas Online, Joe Dallas Online. So like us and then follow us. Hey, my new podcast, especially Christians in a Cancel Culture, Christians in a Cancel Culture. Check that out on YouTube. I'd love to have you give a listen to that and subscribe to it, please. When you listen to it, be sure to hit the subscribe button. And if you do subscribe, be sure to leave a comment saying I subscribe so that I can thank you personally for that. And please do share all of these. We'd love to get the word out about these communications we're putting out here. Well, we're here on a weekly basis every Wednesday, 12 noon Pacific Standard Time for Sound Doctrine Bites. I'll see you next week. Meanwhile, let's keep in mind two of the most important questions we can be asking. Acts 9:6, Lord, what would you have me to do? Well, in response, Romans 3:5. What saith the scripture? Let's you and I never stop asking those two questions, okay? Hey, thanks for being here. God bless.